Mike, you mentioned the Beatles, and obviously there was it a friendly rivalry? What was the relationship like with the Beatles?
Yeah, it was like if you're going to go play tennis with somebody, and they're a little bit, they're as good as you are, makes you try to be better. And it's like that in our cases with the Beatles. In fact, I remember George Harrison on a great documentary that they had done. George and Ringo and Paul were sitting there, and George says, "We were just trying to keep up with the Beach Boys," which was great. I mean, and Paul McCartney once said that "God Only Knows" was his perfect song or his favorite song or something along those lines. So it couldn't have been more complimentary. And I spent some time with him at Maharishi's place in India in 1968, and in fact George Harris and I had our birthdays there that year, and his in late February, mine in mid-March. And so we knew each other pretty well, and there was a lot of mutual high regard and respect, musically speaking, and of course we were completely awed by their success, as almost everyone in the industry honestly would have to admit they were. But on the other hand, we did pretty well. Like I mentioned earlier, Good Vibrations being number one in '66, and we were voted number one group in England. So it was a competition. It was a rivalry, but each person, I think, each group inspired the other. So it was kind of cool.
Was there a part of that life in those days that you didn't like? A lot of people say that they don't enjoy the studio sessions or writing, but you yourself, Mike, you always looked like you loved performing live, and I imagine that was probably the highlight. Of
the things about music career, I do prefer the live performances because there's a spontaneity to it. There's an excitement to it when you actually see people enjoying themselves to this extent that they'll maybe get up and clap and bop around. Of course, when you're starting out and your fans are all young people, they're quite a bit more, active and wild or so, and girls screaming and stuff. Maybe they don't do that these days, but I still prefer performing. First of all, you get to go to some places where you ordinarily wouldn't. Early in our careers, we came out to Australia, to Japan, to Germany, to England, to Scandinavia. So it's, we've gotten a chance to see a lot of the world, and even in our own country, we've been places where we probably wouldn't have gone had we not hit records and been asked to do so by the promoters and stuff. So I think it's, there is a lot of time away from your home. The travel can be tiring, but then learning meditation helped too, because that gives you a lot of deep rest and so on. So, I'm never going to complain about any of it because, it's just been too great. I've been afforded too many great opportunities and met some interesting people, and had a great time.
Mike, the Beach Boys has been a great success story, but there's been a lot of down times as well. Obviously the death of Carl and Dennis and Brian's problems, and there's been lawsuits, and it continues on. The passion for the Beach Boys, I think, around the world continues, but it's been heartbreaking at times, hasn't it?
Well, the Beach Boys, being human, we're not unaffected by things like personal problems or arguments or disagreements and what have you, and of course, ill health. My cousin Carl having died of lung cancer, and before that, Dennis, he got involved with drugs and alcohol and couldn't pull out, and eventually got the best of him. Actually, although he drowned inadvertently, he was under the influence at the time. So it's really sad to see that with your first cousins and bandmates and and family members. It makes it even a little more rotten when it happens. But But, you know, the big story is the Beach Boys music and the success and the amount of people that have been influenced by it in such a positive way. I mean, we've had amazing things said to us by people who were, let's say, Vietnam veterans, and who were our music, and others as well, you know.
No, you mean an awful lot to an awful lot of people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's pretty heartwarming, you know.
Is there a Beach Boys song that stands out to you as your masterpiece? I mean, it is an amazing catalogue of songs, but is there one that really stands out as the Mike Love favourite?
Well, Good Vibrations has to be probably the most unique and non-derivative. You know, there are so many songs that sound like a compilation of other songs, a synthesis. But Good Vibrations, to me, sounds so different, so unique. I mean, the chord progression, the actual vocal arrangement, the interesting sound itself, the use of a theremin, instruments that my cousin Brian used. So there's a lot to be said about Good Vibrations. And plus, it was successful.
Speaking of success, a huge wave of success in the late 80s with Kokomo. Did that come as a great surprise, just how big you guys surged, you know, how quickly you surged to the top again?
Well, yeah. Well, it took a few months for it to get there, but in fact, the record company that was released on the soundtrack for the movie Cocktail, the record company really didn't believe in it. But we took it under took the initiative and got it played in a lot of radio stations as it built and finally became number one. So, and I mean, I wouldn't have foretold that it was going to be a number one record. I thought it was a great record, and I really liked doing it, and I co-wrote it along with the Mamas and Papas great guy, you know, John Phillips. And so it was a true collaboration. But, you know, who identified it as a big record was the director of the movie Cocktail. He said that this is your best song since Good Vibrations. And I didn't know, but I said, well, I'm glad you like it. And then ultimately it exceeded Good Vibrations in record sales.